So, this encounter took place approximately 2 to 3 years ago in my local village. I was about 11 years old. It was the last day of Year 6, the UK equivalent of 5th grade, at my primary school, and after school that day, my friend and I, we'll call her Lola, decided to stop by the local supermarket to buy some candy. Now, with it being the last day of Year 6, Lola and I got our school shirts signed in Sharpie marker by our classmates. It's a pretty big thing at most primary schools in the UK. Anyway, so we entered the supermarket, and a man who looked to be in his mid to late 50s approached us. He was quite overweight, and he was wearing a manky yellow polo shirt covered in sweat and grease. He had next to no hair on his head, and what he had left were a few greasy, matted gray strings. He basically looked like your stereotypical pedophile/stalker. Lola and I were relatively aware of the whole stranger danger topic, as we had talked about it in school, and our parents had lectured us on it at home, so we felt a little uneasy when we saw his appearance, and not to mention the awful stench of BO wafting from his body. The man started the conversation by saying a simple hello. At first, Lola and I assumed he was just a sweet old grandpa trying to be friendly, but he soon started asking us about more personal things. I also noticed that he began to stare at our small, developing breasts for a few seconds each. I began to feel very uncomfortable. He proceeded to ask us why our shirts were signed, and being the naive, slightly stupid 11-year-olds we were, we told him that our classmates had signed them, and it was our last day of being in Year 6, which probably gave him an exact idea of how old we were. We then said goodbye to the man and rushed into the sweet owl to try and get away from him. We were starting to freak out, so we quickly grabbed what we wanted and headed straight for the till to pay. Guess who stood right behind us in the queue? Lo and behold, it was the creepy old man who held one packet of pork scratchings in his hands. He shot us a super perverted smile that stretched from ear to ear, and he moved ever so slightly closer to us. By that point, we were just about ready to abandon our items and nope the fuck out of the supermarket, but we didn't want to look suspicious or out of the ordinary. After what seemed like years of waiting in the queue, we finally paid for our sweets and bolted out of the supermarket door. The creep soon realized that we had left the building, so before we knew it, we had him right on our tail. I forgot to mention that the supermarket is directly opposite our primary school, but because it was late in the afternoon, nobody was in sight on the school grounds, so we couldn't exactly walk in there. We walked at a quick pace down the road for about 7 minutes, with the man following us every step of the way. We eventually came to our favorite Chinese takeaway restaurant, which we sneakily hid behind in order to see where the creep was without him noticing us. He happened to be standing next to a rubbish bin located a few meters away from the restaurant. We were left stuck trying to plan how we were going to escape from our hiding place unseen, when out of the blue, a miracle happened. Lola's mom walked past us with her dog, Marley, on a lead. She was, obviously, completely oblivious to the fact that we were scared and hiding from the old man who stood only a few meters away from her. We decided to fuck it and run towards Lola's mom. We weren't going to risk what could have possibly been our only chance of escaping. We, loudly, told her everything that had just happened to us, and she immediately changed direction to walk us back to Lola's house. While we walked, I turned my head to look behind me, and I saw the creep quickly walk off into the distance in the opposite direction. After that terrifying day, Lola and I never saw that man again. He definitely wasn't a local, and we hoped he hadn't caused trouble for any other kids around our area. I'm currently almost 18, and this happened when I was a 3 or 4-year-old boy. I know that because it's one of the first memories I can recall myself having, probably because it was a pretty major event in my otherwise simple life. I was living in Moscow with my parents and my older sister. We were a pretty poor family and lived a very conservative lifestyle. My parents would go to work every day, and while my sister was at school, my grandparents would come over and cook for me and look after me, which is very normal for a Russian family. Back to the point, it was the summer of 2001 or 2002, and my family went on our bi-weekly supermarket trip. It was a big deal as I wasn't allowed to get out much due to the fact that we were living in a pretty rough district of Moscow. My dad was driving that day, and everything was normal when we got to the supermarket. While my mom and sister were getting all the food and other things, I would normally be with them. That day, I stopped to try and read a label or something, and when I looked back up, I realized that my mother wasn't there. She assumed that I was still following them, while I assumed that they were taking a while picking the groceries. My dad wasn't nearby, as I'll explain later. It was one of those moments, which we all experience, where we lose our parents in the supermarket and start freaking out. As a toddler, I obviously started tearing up and didn't really know what to do. Then a man saw me, ran up to me, and asked what was wrong. I told him that I lost my family, and he quickly asked if my mother was the blonde lady. I told him that she was, and he stretched out his hand and told me that he knew where they went. I immediately got very happy and held his hand as he walked me out of the supermarket into the car park. Despite what my parents told me about following strangers, I assumed that my mom had already bought everything and headed off back to the car. The man walked me up to his car, opened the door, and told me to climb in. Looking back at it, that was probably the stupidest thing I ever did in my life because I proceeded to get in the car as he shut the door. This is where my dad came into the story. When we were in the supermarket, he realized that he left the multimedia controller in the car. For those of you to whom this makes little sense, cars at that time had the big multimedia boxes installed, and you could attach different controllers onto them, which were upgradable and gave you different functions or look better, etc. These removable controllers were quite expensive, and thus it was extremely common for cars to be broken into in order to have them stolen. Thus most people developed a habit of removing it and taking it with them, or at least putting it in the glove box. My dad quickly went to grab it from the car, fearing that it could be thieved. While he was in the car, he saw me walking with a stranger and immediately realized what was going on. He got out and sprinted towards us, and he got there just as the strange man closed the door with me in the car. I'm not going to pretend that I know what happened next, or make up a Hollywood-style fistfight between my dad and the man, but all I know is that a few seconds later my dad carried me away from the car, and I couldn't see the man anywhere in sight. It was my dad's pounding heart that made me realize what had just happened, and I started crying hysterically and apologized to my dad and mom who had run outside to look for me. I think that was the last straw for my parents, as a month or so after that, we sold our flat and lived with my grandparents while my parents were finishing buying a new flat on the opposite side of the city, in a much safer district. Parents, regardless of how smart you may think your kids are, don't leave them unattended in public places. There are some horrible people around, and not only in Moscow. I have 3 children. My middle child, my son, is the sweetest thing. He is compassionate and empathetic, which at his age, 3, is rare. When we go out in public, people take notice. Especially if it's just him and me. He will talk your head off and has impeccable manners. It was during a last-minute shopping trip this took place. One child was in school, the other was with my mom. So he and I had some alone time. I always treasure these trips because I get to experience his beautiful personality unfiltered. We go to the store, get what we need out of the food section, then head to the toiletries. He is happy just talking away. Mostly about things relevant to him in his 3-year-old mind. Telling me he is a superhero, having to save a princess. Asking to pick up something special for his brother and sister. All around, a cute kid. We go down the oral hygiene aisle to pick up some toothpaste. As we are leaving the aisle, I notice a man and woman together. I'm assuming they are married. The woman continues onto the aisle, whereas the man stops close to where my son and I were and just sort of stares. I figured he was listening to our conversation, as most people do. Seriously, the kid talks a lot. It didn't freak me out, but just made me more alert. So this guy, without prompting, says to me, he's cute. Can I have him? I was weirded out, but said, haha, no, I love my boy. I think I'll keep him. Well, that's too bad. I'm thinking that's going to be the end of our exchange. I try giving him the benefit of the doubt and assume he was joking and didn't realize it was creepy. At this point, my son sees a Batman toothbrush he must have. I explain to him, yes, it is the most amazing toothbrush ever, but I just don't have the money to buy another one right now. Being 3, he was obviously upset. End of the world type stuff. So, the man completely bypasses me and comes up to my son, what about this one? Do you like this one? If you lived with me, I'd get it for you. Now, I'm completely freaking out. Who ignores the mother to talk to the child? Offering him something he can't have? What did he expect? My son to say, in front of me, that he wants to go with the man and I let him? It was just super weird, him coming at my son like that. I gave him the full effect of touch my kid and I'll stab you face. He sort of backs off, but doesn't go to join his wife. I'm super cautious when it comes to my kids because my aunt was murdered by a serial killer. It has left this aura of fear, despair, and paranoia in my family, making something big out of something small. But I knew this was big. At this point, I'm like fuck this and noped our ass out of there. This guy, very cautiously, starts to follow us, going into an aisle when we are heading out. He was trying very hard to be nonchalant, staying a good ways behind us so as to not arouse suspicion, but being hyper-aware for the reasons above I took notice. So, I go down aisles I had already been down, then going again. He followed us everywhere. What was he trying to do? Kidnap my kid in the middle of a crowded supermarket? After this dance of ours, I decide to head to the bathroom and hide out for a while. What do you know? He heads to the men's room. I get into the restroom and block the door with my body, meaning someone would have to knock before coming in because they couldn't open the door. I figured if he tried to force his way in, I'd have a head start. I decided if he was still there when we got out, I would alert security. I could have handled him if he decided to make his move since I practice Muay Thai, but I really try not to use it if I can help it because it is such a brutal art form. My son and I chill out in the bathroom for about 45 minutes, sort of awkwardly. I give him my phone to play a game while thinking of what my next move is and all the horrible things this guy could have planned for my son. All the while thinking, what was this guy's end game? Abduct a kid in broad daylight? He had to know he would get caught because I would make a huge fuss. The store would go on lockdown. Did he want to get arrested? Did he think he could get away with it? Was he tweaked out on drugs? Mentally ill? So many questions without answers. This ends anticlimactically because when we left the guy was long gone. I just think how lucky we were that nothing happened or that this guy wasn't more patient. I have no doubt in my mind I would have murdered someone for trying to take my kid.